Hey guys, so before the video starts, this is the last day of September, so I just want to say thank you so much to Purple and Jinxalot1 for sending me coffees on my coffee page. You guys are seriously making me so happy, and you are helping me move towards my goal of getting a mic, so thank you two so much. We are now at 36% of our goal, and if anyone else wants to buy me a coffee, you will also be specially thanked at the end of October. So again, thank you so much, Purple and Jinxalot1 on coffee. You are helping me make my dreams come true. So with that being said, let's start the video. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel, or if you are new, welcome here to my channel in general. I apologize for having wet hair, but if we wait for it all to dry, night will fall and I'll have no more time to film a video. So that being said, let's get into it. So this teaching in Korea video is a part 2. I already posted my part 1 about what my school was like as a workplace, totally separate from actual teaching and the children. And you can go watch that if you want. There's a lot of drama in that video. All the tea is there. Not so much tea in this video, just funny stories, because this video is all about the kids. I think it might be best to start at one end of a spectrum and go to the other. So my spectrum of my personal experience ranges from demonic possession to maternal instinct, and we're gonna get started right at demonic possession. So my school was set up where from like 9 to 2-ish, it was like a camp, so local elementary schools brought their kids in and they could sign up for a 2-day camp or all 5 work days. So every week we were getting new kids. So if we got on average 200 to 300 kids a week, and there's 62 days or weeks in a year, I met literally thousands of different children at this job. From 3 to 6 then is our after school, and that's like Hagwon style, and we had after school from grades 3rd to 6th. I had those kids, they signed up for either one semester or the full school year. I saw those kids every day. We also have summer and winter camp, which is, as it sounds, when there's summer break or winter break, we have camp at my school, and it's a sleepover camp. So we're starting at winter camp. We had a girl that became infamous. Basically every class period, she's totally angelic, and then for no reason whatsoever, she just like snaps and attacks one of her classmates. So I'm going into this class like, all right, which girl is it? I've heard she's like the cutest one. So I go in and I'm like, all these girls are cute. I don't know which one it is. And I go through the lesson and the activity with no hiccups. Everything's fine. They're all totally nice. And we finished the class early actually. So I am playing hangman on the board, and I turn around and I'm asking for letters, and as they raise their hand, I noticed the one girl who's kind of sitting by herself, and I hadn't really noticed her earlier because she was very quiet. She was like in The Incredibles, when Jack is first kind of coming into his powers, and he's sitting in the crib, and he gets mad, and he starts vibrating and rumbling, and then he becomes a fire goblin. She was like vibrating. She was sitting in her seat like staring ahead, getting like shakier and shakier, and I was like, oh my god, is she gonna explode? And she was tiny. She was definitely the smallest girl in the class. She stands up from her seat, and I watch in one swift motion, she grabs her backpack, brings it behind her head and brings it down on the head of the girl in front of her, and just starts beating and beating and beating the girl sitting in front of her. And I'm like, oh my god. And the kids do nothing because she's like this. They're used to it. So the girl getting beat does nothing. She's just letting herself get beat, and the other kids are just watching her, and I was like, ah, and I had to run over and I took the backpack away, and she was like, like seething with rage, and I had to like hold her back because she wanted to attack something, and we had like a teacher group chat. So I'm like holding her with one arm and like texting with my thumb, like, girls freaking out, like to whatever the room was, like someone please come, and like someone had to come and take her out into the hallway. And I just like returned back to the class after taking her outside like, that was weird, kids, but they were all totally like, this happens, teacher, it's normal. And I was like, this is normal? She had no obvious triggers. She would just sit in class perfectly happy, do everything normally, and then just snap and attack someone. I had never seen anything like that. The way she was just like vibrating and just whoo! It looked like she was possessed. That was probably the worst situation I ever had because she did physically attack another student. We're moving into neutral territory now. Neutral because the situation could have gotten really bad, but now I look back and I laugh and it's kind of like funny. So we regularly had special needs children come in. Some schools were really good and put an aide with them, And some schools totally ignored that they were special needs at all to begin with. But this was one of those weeks where there was a boy with special needs who did not have an aide, and the school was basically like, ignore him, he's fine. They gave us a note like, oh, this boy in this class will be just like drawing in his notebook by himself, don't bother him. He's special needs. I get to that class and I notice him right away. He's sitting in the front, he has his notebook out, and he's just like writing the same sentence over and over and over and over. And they were third graders, they were babies. So I was like, okay, this is the kid, fine. So I go through the lesson, he doesn't want to participate in the lesson, whatever, I'm not gonna bother him. We go through the activity involved like cutting and gluing and making a paper craft. He didn't want anything to do with the activity, he just wanted to write in his notebook. Fine, I'm not gonna bother him. And it was the period before lunch. So we go to clean up to get ready for lunch, and I'm like, okay everybody, scissors, 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 glue, 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 and I'm collecting all the scissors and glue. And he looks around and he realizes that everyone's cleaning up, and he panics because he didn't make the craft. I gave him the paper in case he just wanted to like, I don't know, rip it up or draw on it, I didn't care. So he saw he had the paper and he didn't make the craft like everyone else. So he starts panicking that he didn't make the craft. I don't know if he thought he would get in trouble or I don't know. So he starts grabbing at scissors that kids hadn't given in to me yet. And I was like, no, no, no. And I was like, come on, give me your scissors. And he wouldn't give me his scissors, and he started looking around and everyone was packing up and starting to line up for lunch. And he just started having a full-blown tantrum with hands of scissors. Imagine Wolverine, like he probably had a pair of scissors around each finger, literally holding fistfuls of scissors. This third grader starts throwing full tantrums, stamping, wailing, flailing his arms in the air, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to calm him down, and he's over here like with scissors in his hands, freaking out, and the kids, the rest of the class sees that I need to handle him, and they're like, we need to help teacher. So imagine a boy is flailing his body with fistfuls of scissors, and you have like 15 other third graders rush at him like, we need to help teacher, stop the boy. And I was like, no, like pushing them all the way, like, don't get near him. The last thing I needed was for him to like accidentally stab one of them in the throat, and then I have a bleeding child on my hand. I was like, get away. So I'm like holding back third graders with my limbs and trying to like calm him and control him, and he's just crying and screaming, and they're like, help teacher. I'm like, no, don't help teacher, get away kids. And in all of that chaos, I managed to message the teacher chat like, help, please, tantrum, scissors, dangerous. Like I couldn't make a sentence, I was just typing singular words. No one reads my message. And if they did read my message, they were like, a Korean teacher should handle it. Like none of the foreigners came to my aid, except the two that I was closest with. And obviously they had their own classes they were busy with. So they must have gotten to lunch, sat down with their lunch, read the teacher chat, saw I was having an issue, and then they came up to help me, bless them. So the one came up and he took them to lunch, and then me and Sarah got the boy to calm down and hand in all the scissors, and we held his hand and we went down into the lunchroom, and we walk in and he's like coming off of a meltdown, so he's like like deep breathing. Obviously he looks like he was screaming and crying, his face is all red, he's sweaty. We go into the lunchroom and my one Korean manager is like, oh, what happened? And I was like, you didn't look at the group chat? I don't blame him, and I don't blame anyone. It was just something crazy that happened. And to think back at it, like just those fists of flailing scissors and all of the other third graders rushing at him to stop him, and I had to like, oh, it was a do or die situation, I'll tell ya. So that's the most neutral story because he wasn't a bad kid, it was just a bad situation. So moving into some of the more positive stories, kids are so cute. I had a bunch of little funny small things happen. The one thing I remember so vividly, and I think I only do remember it so vividly because it was within my first like month teaching there, we had a group of 6th graders. And every once in a while when a 6th grade class comes through, one of the boys will develop a crush on one of the female teachers. That's what happens when boys are 12. So I was leaving a class, and this group of boys, because when you're 12 you travel in a pack, this group of boys stops me in the hallway, and he's like, oh, teacher, one of my friends in class A has a crush on you. And I was like, okay, because what do you say to that? I was just like, okay. And he goes, do you have a boyfriend? And I'm like, in what world is, like, I'm the teacher. I'm not, even if I didn't. So I was like organizing things in my basket and they saw that I have a couple ring because, you know, it's a thing in Korea when you're in a serious relationship, not married, just serious relationship, you get couple rings. It's not a wedding ring, it's just a couple ring. So they saw the ring and he turns to his friends and he goes, oh, she's married. And they're all like, oh. And I was like, oh, yep, I'm married. And they were like, oh, we have to tell. And they started like gossiping to each other about like how to break the news to their friend. And I just kind of like left. I just ran back to the teacher's office. That sticks out in my memory because I was still generally a new teacher, but little things like that happened all the time. Just little funny moments between kids where they don't really understand how the world works yet and what may or may not be inappropriate, but they're just gonna say whatever they want anyway because they're, I mean, what grade? Between 3rd and 6th, you're like, what, 8 through 12? There's a lot of growing going on when you're 8 to 12, so lots of funny little things. That's the best part of being a teacher, is just those little daily conversations. We are now done with camp stories, now on to after school. So when I first started, I had a kindergarten class, like a 4th grade class, and I don't even remember. I just really remember my kindergarten class because at the end of the semester in March, I made a special request to my school, like, please, if these kindergartners move on to 1st grade, put me in whatever 1st grade class they have. And they did, my school listened. So I got to follow these kids from kindergarten to 1st grade. I had other classes my 2nd semester teaching there that were a little higher. They were 4th and 5th graders. Well, kind of a mixed class. It was mixed between 3rd and 5th, I think. So I have 3 kids I'm gonna mention. I'm going to share their English names because they're not their real names. They're already fake names. So first was Max. Max was really smart. He was a 3rd grader in a class of mostly 4th and 5th graders. He was always one of the first to finish work, and he would finish work, and even if he wasn't the first, he would always raise his hand and go, teacher, I'm first. Just like that. That's the cadence. It was like anxiety ridden, like, please, teacher, me, all the time. And if I checked, if he was like 3rd to finish, and I checked one student and then the 2nd student, and he wasn't up next, or he sensed that I would miss him, he would go, me, teacher, me. And it was just like so cute. If I was saying something, if my Korean co-teacher was saying something and I tried to help explain it in English, all the time he would just raise his hand and go, teacher, what? But my favorite Max moment was my Korean co-teacher was explaining something in Korean and Max sat at the back of the room. So I was standing on the back wall waiting for my Korean co-teacher to finish so I could start my half of the lesson. And as my Korean co-teacher's talking in Korean, Max turns around and looks at me and goes, teacher, what? And I was like, listen, buddy, I don't know. If you don't know what he's saying, I don't know what he's saying. So that was Max. I miss Max. Our last 2 stories are about 2 of the kids that I followed from kindergarten to 1st grade. The one is, I posted about her on my Instagram story. So she came to us in kindergarten and she was super, super shut off. Like, she did not speak. I didn't hear her voice for months. She didn't speak. She didn't make eye contact, she didn't touch anything, she didn't interact with any kids, but it was like coloring activity and the kids would go wild with like the markers and she wouldn't touch a marker. She didn't make eye contact, she wouldn't speak. If you touched her, she just became stone. But as we spent more and more time with her, she opened up a lot more and we came to see that she was intelligent. She just didn't want the interaction. And I would try to call on her to force her to speak because towards the end of me knowing her, she was starting to speak out loud. Once she even raised her hand for me and I called on her and she answered by herself. I'm about to like cry thinking about it. Guys, there's no way for me to explain in words how much she grew from the time I met her to the time I left. She was starting to play with the other kids. She was starting to pick up pencils and do things on her own. And we knew she knew what was going on in class. We knew she was like absorbing the information, because she would come back with her homework, and her homework would be like almost perfect. Like, she was better at homework than a lot of the other kids that were participating more in class. Towards the end of my time there, one of their art activities the one day was to draw suns. And they were like, yellow sun? And I was like, how about hamburger sun? And they were like, teacher, no! Orange sun! And I was like, pony sun! Like, just going crazy. I was drawing all kinds of crazy things on the board, and they were like, teacher, ah! So they were drawing all kinds of crazy suns. And April was drawing a person sun, and it was a person with black hair. So I was like, oh, April, is this your mom? And most of her communication was shaking her head yes or no. She still hadn't become comfortable saying yes or no out loud. So she shook her head no, and I go, April, is this you? Shook her head no. April, is this the teacher? Like the name of my Korean co-teacher? And she shook her head no. And I had this little feeling, and I was like, April, is this me? And she shook her head yes. And we had this little like moment where she just kind of like side-eyed me, but she side-eyed me and like, you know. And I was like, April, I know. So I don't know what her deal was. I don't know why it took her almost a full year to start communicating, but just show kids kindness. You never know what they're going through or not going through. Maybe she just hates talking. I don't know. April and I had this little unspoken bond just because I showed her kindness and she knew I was showing her kindness, and she knew I was going to let her grow at her own pace. April, I hope you continue growing. I'm really glad I got to be in your life and show you that amount of kindness. And moving on to Bernardo. Bernardo was one of my favorite kids because he was the most ridiculous. And ridiculous in such a benign way. So he came to us a little late into like the latter half of kindergarten, and I always say like he thought he was a frog because he would sit on the ground in this way that was perched like a frog. And he would always try to like bring his legs up into his chair so that he could sit like a frog in his chair. And we always had to like pause class and be like, Bernardo, sit nicely. And he would go, like a dog listening to like a distant siren. Like when you call a dog and it's like, whoop, he would literally, it would be like, Bernardo. Oh, he was so funny and cute. We were pretty sure he like didn't know how to read at all. Like we would point to the A and be like, Bernardo, what sound is this? And all the other kids would be like, ah! And we'd be like, so quiet. Bernardo, what sound is this? And he'd be like, we were sure he couldn't read for the longest time, but he started raising his hand and answering in class, and he was actually pretty smart. So I don't know what Bernardo's deal was, but he was so cute. He actually left just before summer started to spend the summer with his grandparents in the countryside, but like right before he left, I was walking up from a different class, and his class hadn't started yet. And he was sitting like a frog. Even as a first grader, he was still sitting like this. He was sitting like a frog in the kind of entrance to like the teacher's area, like the teacher's desks and like the management desks. There was a doorway that kind of led to all of that behind the scenes stuff away from the classrooms. He was sitting perched in that doorway. And the kids know that that's where the teachers live. They know that's where the teachers are. So I didn't know if he wanted me, if he wanted my Korean co-teacher. So I looked at him down on the ground, sitting like a frickin' frog. And I said, Bernardo, do you need something? And he looked up at me and he just smiled. Like, he just genuinely loved me. And he went, and I was like, that was the first time in a year of teaching, almost a year, that I felt any shred of maternal instinct. And I just wanted to pick him up and walk him back to class and put him in his seat and ask him if he wanted a snack. Like, I was like, oh, Bernardo, like I want to hug you and cuddle you. Just the way he looked up at me with such innocent trust. He trusted me fully and completely and was just there for whatever I had to say. I don't know if he had no idea what I was saying or if he was much smarter than he let on to, but he just looked up at me in this way like... Alright guys, this is a super long video. I'm gonna need to edit it down, but I hope you enjoyed those stories. If you saw my part one, yeah, a lot about being a teacher in Korea absolutely sucks, but the kids are really what make it worth it. I loved my after-school kids so much. The camp did it was a struggle sometimes, but it was also really rewarding other times. Just kids are amazing, and you need to show them kindness and treat them well and fairly all the time, because you don't know what they're going through at home or at their normal school. They're only with you for a couple days, or they're only with you a couple hours in their day. So just always try to be a positive space for them. Like, your space around you is positive. I really, really am going to miss some of my after-school kids. I hope Max, Bernardo, and April are gonna grow up and do wonderful, amazing things, as well as most of my other after-school kids. I hope you guys enjoyed that story time. If you want to donate a coffee to me, my coffee is ko-fi.com/RachelRoseDiary to leave me like a tip. I will be in America soon, so if you have any ideas of what content you want to see from me in America, leave a comment down below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye bye!